Well, it's time to get my seedlings thinned out and transplanted into some bigger pots, so that's what I'm going to show you in today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to another Slightly Rednecked video. Again, my name is Chris. If you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own meat, eggs, and vegetables from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or heck, even a spare room in your house if that's the way you want to do it. This is part of my Seed to Harvest series where I'm taking you guys from starting my seeds indoors all the way through the end of the gardening season, all the way to harvesting the fruit in the end. So if you're a first-time gardener, this is a great place for you to be. This will help you get started on the right foot. Today, I planted these seeds out a couple of weeks ago. I did a video on that. You can go back and watch the first video in the series, the next video where I put them under the lights, and in this video we're going to talk about what to do next to thin them out because more than one seed germinated in most of them, and to get them transplanted into some bigger pots with some potting mix so they have some food they can kind of eat. If you're not going to transplant your seeds out, if you're just going to take them straight to the garden, at about 10 days after they sprout, you need to give them some kind of fertilizer. Now I'm transplanting them into a potting mix that has compost mixed in with it, so I'm not going to be doing any fertilizing, but if you are just using a potting mix, a sterile potting mix like we talked about in the last video for starting them, and you're not going to transplant them anywhere until you put them out in the garden, at about 10 days old you do need to start fertilizing at about a quarter strength what you would normally fertilize plants with. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Alright, so the materials I've got on hand here is I've got some pots to transplant them into. These have been cleaned, bleached out so I can avoid any kind of fungus or anything like that transferring over. I'm going to use these bigger pots like this for my bigger plants like my broccoli, my cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, those kinds of things. These smaller pots I'm going to use for the lettuce, the spinach, some of those kinds of things because they're not going to be growing indoors much longer before they go out into the garden. They don't need that much room to spread out their roots. They're kind of shallow rooted anyway. Then I've got my potting mix right here, and again, potting mix is you can make your own, but honestly if you are just going to do a handful of seeds, it's probably cheaper just to buy it. Potting mix is basically 1 part pea moss, 1 part compost. Well, let's bulk that up so I can get it right. 2 parts peat moss, 2 parts compost, 1 part vermiculite, and just about maybe a cup of lime. To kind of balance the pH out. This is, or you can take the sterile seed starting mix that you get, bags, and just add about equal amounts of compost to that. That makes a pretty good potting soil as well. But you do need a potting soil for this step because you need them to get the nutrients that comes in the potting soil. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And back to my, let's see, I'm not looking at my notes, I'm doing this all off memory. So if you were going to make it from scratch, let me do that over because I think I got the ratios wrong. You could do 2 parts compost, 2 parts peat moss, 1 part vermiculite, or you could do 3 parts compost, 3 parts peat moss, 1 part vermiculite. Either way, about a cup of lime mixed in with that, and that's just not lime like the limes you eat, lime like ground up limestone. You can get it in any garden supply store, just go in and ask for lime, they'll give it to you. That balances out the pH a little bit and helps provide some calcium to the plant. So if you're planting things like tomatoes or some of those kinds of things, it can help with avoiding blossom end rot in your tomatoes. So anyway, I've got my potting mix all here. Again, you're best off probably if you're just planting a handful of seeds just to buy potting mix. It's going to work just as well. I've got all my plants out here, well not all of them, but most of them that I'm going to plant here. I did make some mistakes, I'll show you that as we go, what I did wrong, what you can do to avoid the issue. You may look, some of these don't look quite that great. I'm a little embarrassed to show them on film, but hey, show my failures and my successes so you guys can avoid failures as well. I've got some tape, this is painter's tape. I like masking tape, but this is what I got. So whenever I get them into the bigger pots, I can just write on there what it is, tape it on the side so I don't forget. And I'm going to use some gloves today just because I don't want to get my hands super messy. It's nice enough to work outside, but it is a little bit chilly to be washing my hands between things and having wet hands while I'm doing all this, so I'm going to use some gloves. Transplanting these out is pretty easy. Let me bring you in close and we'll show you how to do that. Alright, so first thing I need to do is get rid of some of these pots, get them out of the way. There we go. Start with a couple, 2 of them. And these are just, here's a good thing, you can see these were reduced 50%, now they were $1. It's $1 for 1 plant. By starting them from seed, you get a lot more for your money. It didn't cost me $1 in seeds for all the plants I'm starting today. A little bit in potting mix, but not that much. So the way I'm going to do this is just kind of pack this stuff in here. And what I do is I just kind of pack it up on the sides like that, and I'll get some more, and I'll make a little hole for the plant to go into. It doesn't need to be very deep because these aren't coming out of big, what do you call them, big pots already, so they're not very deep. Pack it all down in there, dig myself a little bit of a hole in here to put it in, and then I'll put a little bit more around the sides. And then I'm going to get my plant, and I'm just going to stick it right down in that hole right there and cover it on up. All right, so I've got my dirt ready. Now I'm going to be transplanting these out into it. What I need to do is thin these out to 1 plant per square instead of 3, because like you can see here, there's 3 in this one, there's 2 in this one. They won't grow like that, so I need to thin them out. And what I'm going to do is just pick the strongest looking plant out of all 3 of these. This one's got a nice true leaf on it already. I don't know if you can see that or not in the camera, but what I'm going to do is just grab a hold of these other 2. Don't pull them out, because if you pull them, you're probably going to disturb the soil. So you can just kind of pinch them off with your fingers, and they can go in the potting mix. It's not going to hurt anything in there. And there we go. Just, whoops, pinched off. There we go. Now I'm left with 1 plant. And to get it out of there, I just kind of push up on the bottom, and I may have to kind of dump it upside down to get it to come out. But you can see that thing has grown roots all through the potting mix here, which is good. It should be doing that. So then I'm just going to make a hole in my plant here, stick it in there. Now, one thing you will notice about these, here, let me get this thing going, put some more dirt around it. Be very, very careful with these. They're kind of delicate at that point. One thing you will notice, one other thing, pack this down pretty good, because otherwise when you water, it's just going to settle anyway. So, and pre-moisten your potting mix so you don't have it all floating around the first time you water. All right, so that one is started out. Sorry, I'm getting a little scrambled here. This one is transplanted. Now I'm just going to stick it over here in the tray. I'll put a label on it once I get this whole thing, whole square of those planted out. I'll go back and label them all so I remember what it is. One thing I want to show you though here real quick. This is a big mistake that I made. And you can see these plants are laying over. This is celery right here. These are Brussels sprouts right here. This is cauliflower right here. The Brussels sprouts especially are laying over on their sides. They're not standing straight up like they should be. And the biggest reason for that is because when I started these, when they first started, I waited a couple of days because I was going to shoot the video on how to move them under the lights for you guys. And I didn't get them under the lights soon enough. If you remember in the last video, they were pretty tall by the time I moved them under the lights. So that causes them to be leggy. They start reaching for the light and then they'll lay over on their sides like that. These will still grow. I mean, it's not a complete loss. But honestly, your best bet maybe at this point to just start over. Just pull all these out, put some more seeds in and start over. Because we're only 2 weeks in. It's not like, you know, we haven't lost that much time. It only took 2 weeks for them to get this way. And I knew really like 5 days ago they were like this. So you could easily just start over. One thing you don't want to do is plant these things deep. You might be tempted to want to plant it like you would a tomato plant, like all the way up to there. You don't want to do that with these seeds. These are celery, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower. They don't grow, they're not like a tomato plant that will grow more roots on the stem. The stems will just rot and they'll die. So you don't want to plant them any deeper than what the level of the soil is while it's in here. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So let me get some of these others go ahead and taken care of. I'm going to thin that out to there. That one there. Cauliflower looks pretty good. It took a little bit longer to get sprouted, so it was under the lights by the time it was sprouting. I think I'm going to take that one. And out of these 3, that one. And that one. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more of these cauliflower to plant out, and then I will get them labeled up, and we'll go on from there. Okay, so I've got my cauliflower planted out now. It's a good time to go ahead and start labeling these. I like to do it, I like to just transplant all of one little square here into pots and then go ahead and label them, because otherwise you will forget what it is and you won't be able to keep track. So I'm going to go ahead and write some labels on here. Sloppy handwriting, but I can read it. I know what it means. And just stick a piece of tape on the pot. That's all it needs, really. So let me get these labeled out, and then we'll go back and I'll show you what I'm doing with some of the other things. All right, I'll be transplanting out some lettuce and some spinach and those kinds of things next. One thing I will say is, you know, I'm using these little nursery pots here, these little plastic pots. You can use whatever you want, yogurt containers, I mean anything that's going to hold water, little Dixie cups. I don't have enough of these cups to go around for everything, so I probably will switch over to some just plastic cups and use those. One thing you got to make sure is I got drainage holes in the bottom of them. Now this is a lot of drainage holes. You don't need quite that many, but poke some holes in the bottom of the cup before you fill it with dirt. It needs that drainage hole to be able to drain properly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fill these up with dirt and get my lettuce all transplanted in. Let me do one of them real quick here and I'll show you kind of what I'm doing. It's basically the same process, but let me get one of these and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so this is my romaine lettuce. This is something else. I can't remember what this is. I think this is cabbage over here. But this is it romaine? Let me make sure. Yes, it's romaine lettuce. And you can see that it got very leggy. Now some of these are better than others. Some of these aren't nearly as tall, I guess. So when I'm thinning these out, I'm going to try to get the shorter ones. They'll have a more likelihood of being able to produce and go ahead and live. So let me get, it's the same process. Just pick out the strongest one. I got to untangle them a little bit and remove the other 2 or 3 or however many there are in there that sprouted. All right, so again, whenever you plant this in there, let me get this out of the seed tray. Get rid of this so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so when I plant this in there, this plant's laying on its side. It will continue to grow, but do not put soil really above the line of where the soil is in here. Just lay it on top of the soil is what you're going to do. So it'll go right in here. Let me make a bigger hole, make room for it. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of lift that plant up and get the dirt around it, but I don't want to plant it any deeper than what it was growing at already. And these will continue to grow. They'll do fine. Again, if you're worried about it, just start over because we're only 10 days in. And that's about it. So these go over on the tray. I'll get the rest of these planted out and then we'll go from there. All right, so I got these all transplanted out. Some of them look pretty good. The spinach and stuff, and I know you can't see it on camera very well, looks pretty good. Some of the other stuff, like some of this lettuce and stuff, got real leggy and it's laying over on its side. Honestly, you're probably better off just starting over with that stuff. Like I said, we're only about 2 weeks in, so we're only missing like a week and a half, 2 weeks at the most if you just start from seed right now. It's not that big of a loss to just start over, start your seeds all over again. But I went ahead and potted them out just because I've got some stuff in the garden growing, so I don't need extra plants necessarily. And I wanted to show you guys, like I said, I make mistakes. I wanted to show you my mistakes as well as my success. And anyway, there's not much to do at this point. Put them under the lights, keep the light, just an inch above the top of the plant, as close to the top of the plant as you can get it without hindering its growth of some kind. They need a lot of intense light right now. And then they're going to stay here until, make sure you water them. And again, I do water these just by pouring water in the tray up about, I don't know, maybe about that high in the tray. Let them soak all that water up. If they haven't absorbed it all in about 20-30 minutes, then I just dump the extra water off. But they, especially initially, will absorb it all. It's not a bad idea if you've got a mister, a good spray mister like this, it sprays real light, nice and easy, to go ahead and water them from the top the first time. Just water them in from the top. That won't disturb the plants too much. So we'll see how these do. If these don't do well, then it's no big loss. I'm going to be doing warm season crops next. I'll come back and shoot videos on those. It'll be a couple of weeks out from now, but I'll get those going. Those are going to be your tomatoes, your peppers, those kinds of things, and we'll do this all over again for those. And they usually do, well, they will do a little bit better. The first time of the season, you always make a few mistakes, and I figured, why hide them from you guys? I'll just show you what I did wrong. So other than just keeping them watered, that's about it until it's time to go out into the garden. That's going to depend a lot on the weather. When it's when the temperatures are above freezing at night, then I can go ahead and start getting these things hardened off and planted out in the garden. And I'll show you those steps in the next video that comes up. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, God bless.